Erik Tengen, co-founder at Oaky. He will talk to us about when room upgrades aren't enough, reinventing upselling to drive incremental revenue across the guest journey. I mean, that's something we all want to do, and hopefully you can provide us some answers to some questions that we have. Erik, the floor is
Wonderful,
yours.
Simon. Thank you so much for having me. Can you see my screen?
Perfect. All good, Erik. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Then let's go. So hi, everybody. My name is Erik. As Simon just said, co-founder of Oaky. I'm from Sweden, but today calling in from a very, very sunny Amsterdam, where there are people packed on the terraces behind me. So happy days here. For those of you who may not know about Oaky, super proud to be the #1 ranked upselling platform for hotels 4 years running. We started out with 3 guys, and now 7 years later, we work with 3,000 hotels in 101 countries and have an office here in Amsterdam as well as in Singapore. Okay, so looking at the topic of today, I was thinking about what were the things that we really saw changing last year. And many of these things might be as something that you all think of and remember. Obviously, guests on the guest side, a lot of travel happened domestically as international travel wasn't possible. It was been mentioned earlier by the previous presentation, cancellation rates were really high due to the uncertainty. A lot of last-minute reservations surged as well. But what we saw from a lot of the hotels that we were in touch with was, despite the very unfortunate event that you have to furlough colleagues or maybe even let go of colleagues, the smaller team, the so-called skeleton team and crew that was left in the hotels started operating with bigger hats, doing more things than they did before, and kind of blurred the lines between some departments, creating more of a teamwork spirit across departments and removing some of those silos that I think the industry has been talking about on events after events after events I've been to the past 5 years to try to remove. So somewhat of a positive thing coming out of this, hopefully. And finally, in a very weird contactless world last year, guests obviously embraced technology like never before, because that was the way to be in touch with hotels. And because guests are a moving target, hotels need to adapt and be where they are. Technology adoption surged within hotels as well. And an example here is like, I look at it like every type of segment. Even my dad, who is now a proud 72-year-old running around with his iPhone, taking pictures of scanning QR codes all everywhere to order stuff from restaurants, etc. Really was a big change. But when we look at one thing from our data that gave us a real aha moment was something that didn't change last year. And that was the spend on upselling. So when we look at this graph, you see the orange line shows demand, and you see this incredible dip in demand in around March. But when you look at the purple line, that is the average guest spend. So every guest that still traveled, that bought something via upselling, how much they spent on average. And what was really interesting to see is that despite this sudden enormous drop in demand, guests that still travel during a pandemic spend the same amount of money as they do pre-pandemic. And this told us something very interesting, of course. It highlights that there is a really big importance for hotels today to try to generate as much revenue as possible from guests that are traveling. A general manager told me the other day, Erik, I think every hotelier in the world has a new focus around 2 things, getting their team as efficient as possible and trying to maximize revenue from every guest that is staying with us. And for him, upselling had become a really key strategic priority in order to do so. So there are many, many things. Jos had another presentation also around upselling, specifically early check-in, late checkouts. Upselling has many different nuances and facets. I've been working with it for 7 years. I'm really passionate about it. There are many things that you can talk about, but today we want to highlight 3 things. And these 3 things are meant to kind of be as an inspiration for how you can leverage on trends that we see have kind of emerged during COVID. Number 1, automated upselling. How to adopt it and what type of benefits hotels can draw if you're not already using an automated solution for your upselling. Number two, cross-channel upselling. We saw a very big, like I said, tech adoption from hotel guests, meaning also that it's no longer enough to only look at reaching out to guests via email if you want to really maximize conversion and revenue towards your hotels. So we're going to talk a bit about that. And finally, the third one, how hoteliers can really look at maximizing total revenue and profit by not only looking at, for example, room upgrades, early check-in and late checkout, but trying to have this mindset around how can we sell the full experience direct with the guest. And then we dive into the first one right away. So automated upselling, of course, the first thing is around, like this general manager was sharing with me, opening up with a skeleton crew, a smaller team than usual. We also see a lot of hotels are expecting a lot of demand coming in the coming months. Automation, of course, is a way to save a lot of time and money. But what I find really exciting about automation and having a digital upselling solution is that it can really complement your kind of offline service at the hotel. So when we look at upselling, we really look at how can you look at each touch point of the guest journey from the point that they book, pre-stay, during stay, and potentially even after checkout, and try to anticipate what are their different needs, and then use automated upselling as a way to offer what you think that your guests want and turn these needs into transactions. So if you do it like this and think about upselling in such a way, guests no longer feel like they're actually paying something extra. They're feeling like they're adding value to their experience. And that results in a whole lot more guest engagement, which hopefully, like Giovanna just mentioned, can even reduce cancellation rates because you're engaging with your guests. And that leads us to the second part around cross-channel upselling. But before we go into what type of channels you can upsell through, I want to talk a bit about the psychology behind it. So when you look back, I wasn't traveling then, but am I 36? But when you were traveling through with like travel agencies, etc., maybe of course groups still do it. Then you typically book the whole stay, everything that you want to do from A to Z. You have arranged with this travel agency. But now with having mobile devices and everything available at our fingertips, the way that we plan and experience our stay has completely changed. And what this graph is showing us is basically how we are experiencing different types of stress levels from the point that we have booked something. Then we are in active anticipation, where we are in the sense of booking. As soon as that's done, we go into what's called a passive anticipation. And this mode is really, really great for upselling, because now in this day and age, when I'm ready to explore new things to add to my stay, I'm much more open towards upselling, which is then a great moment for hoteliers to reach out to their guests and offer additional services and extras. Then you go into the transit. Of course, we know this as guests. There you're more focused around, getting from A to B, not so open towards experiences, etc. The check-in can sometimes be great if there's a fantastic front desk employee offering you something, but most of the time you just want to check in and then go to your stay where you're finally relaxed again, and once again very open towards psychologically adding more things to your experience. So having this in mind, there is a way to look at combining psychology and when you should upsell, depending on, for example, how many days out your guest is compared to when they booked. And on the next slide, we're going to look at 5 different stages of the guest journey and what channels we see are the most effective digitally to reach out to guests. So starting 21 to 10 days before arrival, email is super effective still. We see really, really high conversion rates and have been seeing that for the past 7 years. What we see here is the most effective tool for hotels is typically all hotels do the same thing. They overbook their standard rooms. And this is a great opportunity to target guests that booked like any room type that is not the highest, and basically offer them a way to upgrade to another room. And when they do so, the standard room that they booked becomes available, and you can basically resell it again and again. Then you go a little bit closer to check-in, 5 to 3 days before arrival. Here we see that hoteliers have a great opportunity to upsell and anticipate on needs around what the guests want to see, do, eat, experience, etc., inside or outside of the hotel. And it's very effective to still use email to share a range of personalized ancillary services to offer to the guests. And then, very interestingly, if you have last-minute reservations or 24 hours before arrival, the email conversion rate significantly drops. But we see, for example, by using text message, you have a remarkable, I think 90% open rate within 15 minutes of sending that text message. So when I compare email and text, I like to think of email as this central station where you have trains, a lot of people, a lot of things happening. And my inbox of my text message, there's a very lonely, quiet place where not much is happening. So it's a massive opportunity for hoteliers to utilize this channel, but also kind of a more close channel to the guests rather than using email, which is so crowded. So very important to keep it to one targeted offer and try to be very, very relevant. At the check-in, most hoteliers do it offline. Some hoteliers are using QR codes or maybe kiosk or terminals. But then we go to in-stay, where we see a massive opportunity for hoteliers to basically offer anything that your hotel has to offer. Think about it, what are your needs today? And make it available to your guests through all of the different digital channels that you have. That can be a QR code that you scan in the hotel room, SMS that you send out, depending if there's a spa treatment available or anything else, but also Wi-Fi landing pages and TV. So in summary, many different channels are available to hoteliers today to reach out to their guests. And we see a really, really big correlation with conversion rates. And that, of course, translates to revenue in the end. Then we're going to go to the final part, which is around maximizing total revenue. And that was the title was Maximize Total Revenue by Selling the Full Experience. So when we look at the hotels that we work with and the product mix, we saw that 59% of the revenue generated comprise of room upgrades, early check-in, and late checkout. Like Jos mentioned, very high profit margin deals, super important to be selling these. But if you're only selling these, you're actually missing out on 41% of revenue, which comes from the ancillary services. And the way we see it, these ancillary services have a lower profit margin usually, but are there to really partly also enhance the guest experience and, of course, drive a lot of total revenue. And these are typically things that maybe your guest would buy anyway. They need something to do and they need something to eat. They didn't book breakfast. That is a really, really popular deal to upsell. And in coming from 2019, where maybe we were a bit spoiled with all the demand, now to another scenario where we really have to fight for every piece of revenue, upselling ancillary services direct, we see generates a lot of potential for hotels going forward. And how can you then do that? Well, we have an interesting statistic. If you're offering 8+ ancillary services through to your guests before arrival, the average guest will buy 2.2 deals. And we did a really fun thing last year where we developed a feature which we call the deal library. So we took from our 8,000 deals that hotels have sold to guests using Oaky, and we put together the 125 best-selling ones and created a deal library to really try to inspire hoteliers with what they can sell. So there's a lot of inspiration out there, and I would encourage all hoteliers to look into what they think is the needs of their guests and how can the hotel operationalize this to really try to partly drive more revenue, but also, like I said, enhance that guest experience. And finally, then, more concretely, how can you do this? Well, we were brainstorming with hotels, and the most successful hoteliers we see today with upselling, they start with something they call an upselling meeting. So they basically assign one team member to be the champion to drive upselling strategy in the hotel or in the hotel chain. And then, like, breaking down these silos, they put together the key departments that have all individual goals, and they kind of use upselling as this glue to reach these goals together. And then the whole idea is that this is just an iterative process where they keep experimenting and getting better and better and better. But when doing this, you realize also that upselling very often is a revenue management driven strategy, and it probably still is, but it's not enough to just set a great price. You need to think about what you offer, make sure that it aligns with your goals and needs of your guests, and ultimately make sure that that service delivery from A to Z is really, really great. And then in summary, I think if we look back, also as a founder of a tech company in the hotel industry during COVID, it was a very special year, but there's a silver lining in everything if you have that type of mindset. And I'm really confident that if you have the mindset like most hoteliers we know do, then there is a way to turn anything into an opportunity. And if you're looking at upselling in particular, adopting automation, making sure that you're selling the full experience or as much as you can direct, in combination with trying to upsell on the right channel to the right guest, I think hoteliers around the world can really be set up for success. Finally, before we go back to you, Simon, we have something really, like a passion project we started with. We gathered as much information and knowledge we could around upselling and developed an upselling course. So you can all more than welcome to go to courses.oaky.com, where you can actually for free follow basically an online course in upselling. And if you're interested in level 2, which has a price tag on it for a discounted rate or so, please just reach out to me. Thank you.
Fantastic, Erik. Love it. And first question, when do you go into the vacation rental industry with this? And do you have plans to do so? Then please let me know.
Will do.
No, I mean, there's massive opportunity. You know, one thing that I really, you know, just when I was formulating my question, you said that you were putting a pool together of the best-selling experiences or upselling opportunities. And I've traveled to Barcelona, and the hotel experience was, I mean, it was not even worth mentioning. It was just diabolical. I had to go downstairs to ask for a fork and a knife so I could eat in my hotel room on some stuff that I bought over the street. And it was just, I mean, to think about this particular hotel that I stayed in, to even think about upselling, they're miles away. And I think that's a big challenge here. So tech adoption can happen, but you know, being innovative, you cannot do by a flick of a switch. No. and making that happen. So my question back to you isn't that, what do you do at Oaky to really help that innovation process and that execution process? I mean, to create a breakfast, you don't need to be a rock star, but you need to make it happen, right? And other upselling opportunities, you need to make them happen without losing control over your cost, because execution is expensive. You need to control margins on upselling opportunities as well. What, you know, besides tech, what can you do to help the hoteliers to implement these ideas and make them happen?
Yeah, super good question. And I think this is really, really relevant, because when you speak to many hoteliers, it's not only around how to make it happen, it's also what they can do. When you think about upselling, traditionally, it's always been room upgrades and maybe a few other items. And we try to come into the industry and say, you can have a mindset where you can actually do so much more. I had one deal there, which is around all purely around saving costs. We have a really successful deal where you turn down housekeeping before arrival. And then the whole message is around saving the environment. So it's a cost saver, but we also sell it next to other deals at the same time. But how we do it to help hoteliers, yeah, we have a great customer success team that have really deep market knowledge. So if you start with Oaky, chances are very high that we have a similar type of property with similar types of guests that we've been working with for a long time. And we don't store data around individuals, but we store a lot of really interesting anonymized data, which we can segment into groups. So we have a lot of insights around when you should upsell, how you should upsell, but also operationally make it happen. But that coupled with what I think we see now and what we saw last year, we've never seen such an interest for upselling as we did last year, and it's continuing. And I think that's really going to create something different. When also the C-level executives have more of a push towards finding every opportunity to maximize revenue, then upselling all of a sudden became much more relevant as a strategic opportunity. So that also helps.
Fantastic. Now we need to be very mindful of time, and therefore I'd love to have a few more questions. We're already running over, so it's bad on me as a moderator, but I can only do so much. So Erik, it was great to have you. I don't want to know what a Swede is doing in Amsterdam tonight. So enjoy the evening. Good to see you traveling, and good luck with everything. And Really enjoyed your presentation a lot. Thank you,
Thank
Erik.
you, Simon. Well done moderating.